This video is going to show you how to read a story problem and write an inequality to match what's going on. An inequality is an equation, but instead of an equal sign, it's going to use these two symbols at the bottom. It's going to use a less than symbol or a greater than symbol. Our goal when we're setting up these inequalities is we're looking and we're comparing the total amount in the story problem to the rest of the numbers. Remember, this is the way your less than sign goes. This is the way that greater than sign goes. Underneath, there's some different examples. When you read an inequality, the number on the left is always being compared to the number on the right. So when you read it straight across, I'm going to say 12 is less than 25. In elementary school, I know a lot of times this symbol is used to say a mouth, maybe an alligator mouth, and it's really hungry, so it wants to eat the biggest number. So people will say, oh, 25 is greater. But this is a less than sign, and when you read it, you start with the number on the left and compare it to the number on the right. It says the school photography club charges $10 for each photo in its annual pet photo contest. The club wants to save $75 of its earnings for a pizza party. The club members also want to have at least $50 left over after the pizza party to pay for other club expenses. So we're going to try and write an equation. And normally we have been saying our equation looks like this. Y equals mx plus b. Now that we know that's the form that we want our information to be written in, we need to identify what the numbers in the problem are talking about. So the first number I see is 10, and it says they're charging $10 for each photo. Earlier when we were studying equations, we said that the word each, it means it's going to happen a lot of times. So if it's going to happen a lot of times, that's going to represent m for us, the number that's being multiplied. We said down lower in step 3, that's the clue words that we're looking for, sometimes per, each, and several. So now that I know that $10 is for each photo, I can take the number 10 and write it on this blank because it's going to represent my m. The next number I see in the problem is 75. It said the club wants to save $75 of its earnings. That one's kind of tricky, but if you think about it, are they going to save $75 a lot of times, or are they only trying to save one quantity of 75? I'm going to go with one quantity of 75. If something's happened only once, that means that we said is going to be labeled as B. I'm going to now put the number 75 down in step 4 because that's where it says B is going to be in my list. You can also see that in step 4 it says it's going to be an amount that is happening only one time. So we're only saving $75 one time. The last number that's in the problem is $50. They want $50 left over. So at the end, they want to have $50. That is going to represent our total, which is now letter Y. So I'm going to put that 50 on step 1. It said, what's the total? I now know my total is $50. That's what I want at the end. Step 2 is the thing we haven't talked about yet. And in step 2, it says, is the question asking for the total to be more than or less than? In the last sentence, it kind of starts to show the words more or less. Okay, it says the club members also want to have at least $50 left over. So that's where I'm looking at. It says at least. That means they can have more than $50, but they can't have less than $50. So we have now identified that this one wants to have less than. Because it says also at least, that means it could also be perfectly equal to $50. So I'm going to put an equal sign underneath it. When we get ready to write our equation though, we don't actually have to have both lines. We're going to take one of them off. Okay, step 5, I didn't have room on the last slide, but it says now take those numbers that we just identified, the three numbers of 10, 75, and 50, and put them in the place they go. We said that $50 was our total. We said that $10 was for each photo. So 10 times however many photos we're going to have. And then the one-time amount that we're trying to save was 75. If we're saving it, we're going to add it to the amount we earn for the photos. We also said that the question used the symbol less than because it said at least. So I'm going to draw in the less than symbol. Since it said at least, that means it could also be equal. So instead of only using the less than sign, I'm going to also draw one part of my equal sign. And technically, they're saying also that the bottom part of the less than symbol could be the other section of your equal sign. Okay, now at the bottom of the screen, I've typed really what our equation is meaning in words. It says your leftover money, which is our $50, is less than or equal to, so I need that extra line, less than or equal to the photos, the money I earned from the photos, plus the money I save. So if I shrink this sentence down and I put it underneath my equation, $50 matches up with the leftover money. Then I have my symbol. And then 10x, that's the quantity of money for photos, plus $75 was the amount for savings. Example 2, we have another situation where we're going to try and write an inequality. This says a video game enthusiast saved $750 to spend on a video game player and games. The player cost $400. The games cost $49 each. At most, how many games can the enthusiast play along with buying the player? I'm going to go back and look at my numbers that were in the problem and try to identify what part of the equation they should fit in. Our equation, if you remember, is supposed to be in this form. Y equals mx plus b. The first number I see is $750. He saved or she saved $750 to spend on a video game player and some games. So to me, that's his total amount of money. The total amount he has, and we said that is supposed to equal Y. It doesn't really matter which one of these lines you put it on, step 1, 2, 3, 4, but I'm just going to label them. We said the first number was 750, and that was the total, or it's supposed to represent the letter Y. The next number, as I'm reading along the problem, I see 400. 400 is the cost of the player. If you're not sure, you can ask yourself, am I going to buy one player, only one video game player, or am I going to buy a lot of video game players? You're only going to buy one player because then all the games can be used on that one player. So this is only one. And for us, we said that represents the letter B. I know before step 2 wasn't identify the letter B, but I'm going to put that as step 2 on this one. Letter B, one time I'm going to buy a video game player that costs $400. The last number I see is 49. It says the games cost $49 each. We've used this method several times. If you see this clue word each, that means you're going to multiply with it because you're getting a lot of it. So I'm going to label that as m because the number that I'm multiplying with is going to be by the x. I'm going to go ahead and put this as step 3. That letter M represents $49, the games. For me, the thing I haven't done yet is to decide if it's going to be greater than or less than. So let's look at the last sentence. It says, at most, how many games can the enthusiast buy along with the player? So the words we're trying to figure out is if it says more than or less than. It almost does, but the word they're using this time is most, and it says at most, which means it could be exactly $750 that this person spends. And since it says at most, that means it could also have an equal sign. Most, I'm going to use the greater than symbol. I know in elementary school, people use this method or analogy that says this is a mouth, it's an alligator mouth, and it's going to eat the side that's bigger. So when I read that, I'm going to say that this is the greater than symbol. We also mentioned it says at most, so that means I have to draw an extra line underneath it to represent it could be equal. Final step is put it all together as an equation. We've already labeled these. I've got the y, I have the b, I have the m, and now I know the symbol that's going to be used instead of equals. Y is going to go first. $750 is all the money I have. That has to be more than or equal to all the things I buy. I'm going to buy a lot of video games. The M is going to come next in the equation. Each game costs $49. So 49 times however many games I play. And then I have to add the cost of the video game player or the console. So the video game player costs $400. I'm going to put 400 at the end. And now I have my equation. Your final answer for this setup is $750 is greater than or equal to 49 times however many games I buy plus 400, which is the cost of the player. Okay, last example we're going to look at. Beth has $900 in the bank. Every time she rides the bus, she spends $2. Write an inequality that Beth can use to see how many times she can ride the bus and still have more than $500 in the bank. I'm going to identify the numbers that I see. Beth has $900. Every time, okay, here's a clue word. Every time she rides the bus, she spends $2. The last number I see is 500, and I have some clue words right next to it, which is going to make the last step easy. More than $500. She's starting with $900. The amount you start with is labeled as your B, your beginning amount of money. If you see the clue words each, every, per, several, many, that's your clue word that your number is going to get multiplied. So $2 has the word every beside it, so that's the number I'm going to multiply with. At the end of the problem, it says I still want to have $500 left in the bank, so this is going to be the total amount of money that I need when I finish riding the bus. It also has the words next to it that say more than, so that's going to be the symbol that I use. I'm going to put these in. The B represents $900 that you begin with. The M represents the $2 I'm going to spend. The Y equals the amount of money I want to have at the end, which is $500. And the symbol we said we were going to use, it had the specific words more than. So I'm going to put in a more than sign. This question does not also say the words to put the equal sign. It doesn't say at least. It just says I have to have more than 500. So I am going to keep this symbol just like it is. If I start entering in my numbers for my equation, 500 takes the place of y. We already know we're using the greater than symbol. The m, I'm spending $2 every time. $2 times however much I ride the bus. And then 900 is my b. I'm not going to write down the plus sign. This one says she spends money. If you spend money, do you have more or do you have less? I say when you spend money, that means you need to subtract. You have less money than what you started with. So that means instead of doing plus 900, we are going to have to subtract. We got a subtract sign in this equation. If you look at this equation right now, this kind of is not making sense on the far right side. This says 2 times my bus rides and then I take away $900. That doesn't make sense. So I need to switch the order that these are going in, and we're going to kind of write that backwards. I'm still going to have the total $500 is what I want when I get done. It needs to be more than the amount of money I have right now is $900, and then I'm going to subtract the amount I spend on each bus ride. Because if I put negative 900 at the back, that means I'm taking away $900 after I ride the bus. But that's not what's happening. I have my $900 and I'm taking away every time I ride the bus. So your final answer, actually, your equation should be 500 is greater than 900 minus 2x. When you guys do your homework or you attempt other problems, these are some helpful strategies to go back and look at. They're questions you could ask yourself in your brain to figure out what value represents y, if you need less than or greater than signs, what value is for m and b, and then how to put it back together.